This tutorial is going to talk about how to start putting together your images, merging your layers, and creating your multiplicity so that you have clones of a couple different objects or people in your image. Here's the example that we're going to be working with in the video, but you have your practice images to work with. Here is another example so you can see again how the image is cloned and repeated. So be creative with your images as you're starting to put them together. Starting out, make sure that all of your images are in the same folder. So right now I have all of these pictures here in the same folder, so I'm not putting them randomly into another folder from a different project. The next thing that you need to do is make sure that you have all the pictures that you want to use for this project. So I would go through them and see if there's any that you might want to delete. So that would be pictures where you might have a lot of overlap. So maybe this picture here would overlap another picture if the dogs are sitting in the same spot, so I could get rid of one of those pictures. When you start to put them together in Photoshop, you don't want to choose too many, so get rid of all the ones that you don't think you will use within your image. To begin putting your images together, you're going to go up to the top of your screen in Photoshop and go to File, and then you're going to go to Scripts, and then Load Files into Stack. So File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack, and I'm going to click on that. The next step is making sure that it says Use Files, so you can go through and choose individual pictures. Then I'm going to hit Browse, and I'm going to find the folder that I put all of my pictures in. So that's on my desktop. And I would try to keep it under 10 images, so you don't want to use any more than 10 images, otherwise it's going to take a very long time to stack your photos. So go through and choose just the pictures you want to include. I'm going to hold down Command while I'm clicking and selecting my pictures, and I'm going to select, again, all the ones I want to use. If there's one that I don't want to include, while holding down Command, I'm going to click on that and it will deselect it. Then I'm going to hit Open. Before you hit OK, this is very important, you need to make sure that this button that says Attempt to Automatically Align Source Images is checked. So make sure that that is checked and then hit OK. And what's going to happen is it's going to take a couple minutes, but it's going to load all of your files into one stack. So it's in one document in Photoshop, and it's lining everything up. So if my camera moves slightly when I took this picture, then you would be able to tell the difference if it's slid over to the side or if the couch doesn't line up. So this is lining everything up for me, so you can't tell the difference with the background moving at all. Now that everything loaded, you can look into the bottom right hand corner in the Layers panel over here, and you'll notice all those different images were loaded. So if I hide my first image, you'll see just the dog moving. So the background is lined up, it's in the same spot, and just that dog is moving between my pictures. So you can go through and hide those and make sure you have all the pictures that you wanted. The next step is going to be to name your images. Since there's so many layers, it can get confusing figuring out which layer you still need to find, which one you need to erase the clone away from. So I'm going to start out and click on this first picture, and if I double click on the image, it lets me type in to name the layer. So I'm going to call this dog-middle because the dog is in the middle of my image. Then I'm going to hide that layer and look at my next one. So now the dog is on the left. So I'm going to double click and type in dog on left, and so on. So I'll continue that and try and name all of my layers just so it doesn't get confusing as we continue working. So after you have all of your layers sorted and labeled, the next thing we're going to be doing is going through each individual layer, adding a mask, and then painting out, so using a paintbrush, basically erasing out your clone, inverting the layer to bring the clone back with the background of the next layer. So there's the same process we're going to be doing for each one. So clone, erase, invert. Each layer we're going to be doing that, and it's going to bring back the next layer. So starting out, I'm going to add my mask, which is this little square in the Layers panel with the circle in it. So add layer mask, I'm going to click on that, and this adds this little white box over here which is called the mask. Now I'm going to go to my paintbrush, and the paintbrush works really well with the mask. Couple things, make sure that your setting for your mode is on normal, so change it from soft light if it's set to that. Opacity should be all the way up at 100%. Flow should be up all the way at 100%. And then I'm just going to choose a regular paintbrush. And I'm going to adjust the size so that it won't take too long to erase or to mask off the dog. And then what I'm going to do is start masking off the dog. Now, one thing, if this is not working right away for you, that you need to double check is that you have the color black selected in your color over here. So I'm going to double click on it, just make sure that you click and drag all the way to the corner so you have black selected, and that should fix your problem if that wasn't working for you. But what you're going to do is just try to go around right around those edges as you're erasing away or masking off your clone. If there's any reflective surfaces or shadows in your image, make sure that you mask those off as well. So I'm going to mask off this area. Now you'll notice right away that you can see a little bit of a line where I erased or masked off that shadow or that highlight from the dog there. So what you can do if you have something like that in your image is use a brush that has kind of a feathered edge around it, so a softer edge. And then you can also take down the opacity of that brush and try and blend it a little bit. And I'm going to make my brush bigger here. So you can try and blend that edge so it's not as obvious using a lower opacity and a feathered brush. So now the next step is to invert the image. So I'm going to click Command on my keyboard and then hit I. So this is flipping my mask, so it's getting rid of the background and just bringing the dog forward, just bringing my mask, what I masked off, forward. So now I'm going to hide that layer just so it doesn't get in the way. I'm going to do the same thing to this next layer. So I'm going to click on the dog on the left layer, add my mask, make sure my opacity is all the way back up at 100, maybe get a bit bigger size of a brush so it goes quicker here, and making sure my color is set to black, I'm going to mask off that area of my image. And you'll notice that the color is a little bit different on the couch, and that's because somehow the lighting might have changed in my image from one of the pictures. And this happens sometimes, especially if you're outside and maybe the sun's shining in one picture, then in another it goes behind a cloud. So that definitely happens every once in a while. So same thing, what you would want to do here is just try and blend the layers or the colors together. So what I can do is take down my opacity and try and blend that edge so it's not as obvious. Be careful though to go around too far because you don't want another clone to start showing up. So just try and adjust those edges a little bit there, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute with the other clone showing up. But then once you have that outlined, hit Command on your keyboard and I, and that's going to invert it so that you have your next layer coming through. So if I bring my top layer back, I have the dog from my first layer that comes through to the front here. Go ahead and continue going through all of your layers. Don't worry about areas like this where it might be a little bit darker in the background around your clone. The next video is going to show you how to refine your edges and start cleaning up some of that space. Also, if you get to an area where two of the dogs might overlap or two of your clones overlap, just erase around the edge and try not to bring that other clone forward. So try not to continue erasing the other clone